ESPN has been doing this series where they poll executives, coaches, players, and Deebo Samuel was ranked 9th amongst wide receivers. George Kittle number 1 among tight ends. What do you think?
That's a tough one. I think it could be true. I think we'll know more after this year when we see him play with Trey Lance. I think Jimmy Garoppolo kind of hindered George Kittle, and they've been relying on George Kittle to be more of a blocker. As far as blocking, I think he's definitely the best blocking tight end in the NFL. As far as receiving, I think it's hard to tell. I mean, we've seen flashes from George Kittle where he's just the best player on the field. But I think we're going to see more of that when we see him play with Trey Lance, as opposed to Jimmy Garoppolo, where they relied more on the run game. And they're still going to rely on the run game, but I think we'll see all those off-the-cuff plays, and George Kittle can get open, and we'll be able to see him as more of a receiver. I could definitely see him number 1. I think there's only really two people that can contend for number 1, even though you got some young talent like Pitts. But the other tight end for Kansas City, Kelsey.
Yeah.
So Kelsey had Patrick Mahomes, right? George Kittle's had Jimmy Garoppolo.
That's true.
So it's really hard to judge, but the fact that other players, coaches, and executives rank George Kittle so high, that speaks loudly.
So that's interesting. I was going to go to like they're overrating his run blocking, or not that they're overrating his run blocking. His run blocking is great, but they're just overrating run blocking in general. Like, okay, it's run blocking. I'll take the guy who scores 10 touchdowns a year, because the thing with Kittle is 20 touchdowns in his career, which is crazy for a dominant tight end. Usually the dominant tight ends are guys that have like 60, 70, 80 touchdowns in their career. I mean, Vernon Davis wasn't even a great tight end, but he had hella touchdown catches. And that's just not the way Jimmy used them. Kyle used them. Maybe it's not George Kittle's fault. Also, he's been hurt a little bit the last 2 years, and he hasn't eclipsed 1,000 yards in 2 years. Still, what you say is a good point. He played with Jimmy. And I don't think it's a coincidence that his best year ever, 2018, he was playing with Mullins, who is not a starting caliber quarterback, but he's different than Jimmy, who I also don't think is a starting caliber quarterback. Maybe I'm wrong. Jimmy only throws in this very little area. We've talked about it a lot. Dude, Mullins thought he was Brett Favre. Mullins really would throw the ball down the field, and he was not shy about throwing to Kittle all the time. He would throw to Kittle down the field. With Jimmy, I mean, everything is Kittle. Catch this ball in the flat and break 4 tackles. Mullins didn't use him that way. It'd be very interesting to see if Lance can bring out that deep threat part of Kittle's game, because with Jimmy, it's just you're a yak guy. And I thought actually he had a lot of speed when he was younger.
Yeah, I think Kittle definitely has talent. The other question is health. He's been in the league for a minute. His health, if he can stay healthy, and if Trey Lance can be the quarterback that we think he can, I definitely think George Kittle can easily jump back to the number 1 in everybody's eyes. But Kelsey to me is a better route runner. He's a better receiver from what we've seen so far. But again, it's tough because he had Patrick Mahomes.
It's true. Still, though, I mean, he played with Alex Smith, and he had 1,000-yard seasons. I mean, he's had 6,000-yard seasons in a row. He had 9 receiving touchdowns last year, 11 the year before that, 5 the year before that, 10 the year before that. I mean, he's just so consistent. And yeah, like George Kittle's a better run blocker, but really, how important is that? Like in this outside zone scheme that he's been in the last 5 years, I remember in the 90s, they were dominant with that. And their tight end was Shannon Sharp, who's like 230 pounds and was much more of a receiver. I mean, you can be good at running the ball in the outside zone, whether or not you got Kittle or not. And he's good at it. I'm not taking anything away, but I'll take the guy who scores touchdowns all the time. And maybe that's not his fault. I'm not sure about that with Kittle. I'd like to see him with a different quarterback and maybe a different coach too, man. Kyle gets cute. Oh, you think I'm going to Kittle? You think I'm going to Julio in the end zone? No, I'm going to Muhammad Sanu. Like he always does that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just throw the Kittle.
Control against fantasy football players too. It's like, oh, you want me to feed your first round pick? No.
Right.
Backup running back getting the touchdown.
Yeah, and when you think about George Kittle, he's kind of a Jimmy Garoppolo tight end where it's yak. He's a yak guy, right? And it seems like they want yak guys around Jimmy Garoppolo. So we haven't really seen what he can do, as a receiver. But like I said, I think Kelsey is just a natural better route runner, receiver, tight end than Kittle. But we'll have to see how it goes. I think as far as yak, George Kittle's better than Kelsey. As far as blocking, he's better. So it's a tough one. They're both good. I'd take them both. But honestly, Kelsey might be a better receiving tight end for Trey Lance than George Kittle.
One thing I want to say about Kittle that's actually alarming to me and why I said the Niners should trade him this offseason, no one agreed. In 2018, he averaged 9.9 yards after the catch per reception. That's Debo stuff. That's ridiculous. 2019, 7.1. Still good, but down. 2020, 6.2. 2021, 6.3. And that's just, that's more in line with Travis Kelce. So I just wonder what's up with Kittle, man. He's getting to be almost 30. And to me, he's a little bit like Vernon in the sense that his game was built on strength and speed. Not necessarily like size or hand-eye coordination in the red zone. It was like Vernon. And usually around 30, that goes, especially, with wide receivers, tight ends too. I want to see how much, because Kelsey's like 33, still chugging along, and he could probably do what he does until he's 35 or more. I want to see what Kittle can do, but calling him the best tight end, that's fine. I'm cool with that. I just understand how he can be number 1 and Debo can be number 9, even though Debo's clearly better than Kittle. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it depends on how they're ranking Debo. If they're ranking him straight receiver,
weapons, he'd be number
9. If they're ranking him straight receiver, number 9, it's not too out of reach. But if they're including everything, his total package that he brings to the table, he should be higher than 9.
It'd be fun to see him do like an NFL execs poll of just offensive weapons, because all coaches talk about positionless football, right? And versatility, and the more you can do. So it shouldn't be a bad thing that Debo can do multiple things, unlike Kittle. And I wonder in that respect where he'd be ranked, because I would probably put him 1, offensive weapons, or use check.
Yeah, as a weapon. Yeah, Juszczyk's another guy that's been underutilized. They need to get Juszczyk and Kittle the ball more this year, and I'm looking forward to seeing this year. Hopefully, this can be a defining year for George Kittle under Trey Lance. We'll see. I think Trey Lance is going to rely on Kittle a little bit more than a lot of people are expecting. George Kittle's kind of that guy on the offense that you can kind of turn to. So we'll see. It might be a big year for him.
It's crazy. Like the last few years, the Niners have arguably had they've had one of the best offensive skill groups in the league in Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, and Juszczyk. And yet the whole offense has to go through Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson Jr. Why? Because of Jimmy. Yeah. So maybe the same thing's going to be going this year because Trey's so inexperienced and they don't want to throw a lot. But eventually it'd be nice to throw more because you have all these great receivers, theoretically.
Well, that's the thing, man. We have Kyle Shanahan, who's the offensive genius.
Yeah.
We have all these weapons, and the offense has never been top.
As good as
right? It's never been a top offense.
No.
So when is that going to happen from this offensive genius with all these weapons? And I'm hoping Trey Lance is the difference.
It could be this year, although it'd be nice if they, instead of spending $24 million on his backup, they spent it on his offensive line. But maybe it's like, when you get hurt, we have a really good backup for you. Why don't you just protect me?